The church is a community, and you know what? There are no two of us that look alike. We're all different, and all different ages, and all different backgrounds, and all that. And it's great to come together here on a Sunday morning and be together and be encouraged by one another. So glad you're here. If you're a visitor, I would ask you to do us a favor. There's a little green card in the seat back in front of you. If you could take that out and fill it out. Let us know a little bit about you, and there's a green box back by this middle door, and you could drop that card in on your way out. We would appreciate that very much. And we have a place to go with your kids if they need a little more room to move than is afforded in here and need to make a little more noise. The third door on the right back in the children's area is available if you'd like to go there. The service is being streamed in there, so you can kind of watch with one eye and while you're looking after wiggly kids. And as always, bring your own toys. Today we're going to have a couple of special events. One is after the music, we're having a baptism, so stay around. Don't run off to the potluck. That's the other event today, is we're having a potluck. And hopefully you brought some food to share. If you didn't, you said, oops, it's a potluck, stay anyway. That's okay. There'll be enough. There's always enough at a potluck. So we have a live announcement from Brianna.
Hi guys, I actually have two announcements to talk about. So the first one is the Justice Run, which is up there on the slide, and it's the 15th annual this year. It's going to be Wednesday, July 20th, and all proceeds go to Fierce Freedom. If you haven't heard of them, they're a local nonprofit. They fight human trafficking and exploitation. They do a lot of educational events, and they also support victims, and that really is something that happens around here. They have a lot of information on their website too if you want to learn kind of more about what they do. But anyway, the Justice Run will be July 20th at Carson Park. You can also do it virtually if you you can't make it to that event and you want to do it on your own time. And so you can help the cause by signing up to run or walk. You can volunteer. You can also just donate money too. And if you're interested, the price does increase after June 21st. Then the other announcement I have is about a backpack drive. This is through We Care Eau Claire. I think this is the third year they've been doing this. They basically get a bunch of backpacks, they fill them with school supplies, and then they give them to kids in the area who need it. And they also connect them with other resources as well. So they do that in August. They will need volunteers to help stuff backpacks and help at the event. They don't have all the information about that, but when I know, I can let everybody know. But for now, we're going to be collecting backpacks as a church starting next Sunday, and there'll be 6 Sundays that you can bring in backpacks. So really simple, kind of a lot easier than school supplies. Just bring a backpack. That's all you have to do. It's got to be brand new, though. Don't bring anything used, please. And so, yeah, if you're able to, that'd be awesome as a church if we can support them and bring a lot of backpacks. So, yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Brianna. And Justin has a word for us.
All 3 pastors get the mic today. That's dangerous. So you guys might have noticed there's a table out in the foyer. As Christians, we're encouraged to love the Lord God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And one of the ways we do that is with our mind. And so what Mark, Rob, and I have done is we put together these binders, and inside them you'll find message notes and outlines for all the previous Genesis messages. And what we're going to be doing going forward as we go through the Genesis series is have a handout available every week. We're doing the message, so you can pick it up before service and take notes along with the Genesis series. We're doing this because Genesis is 50 chapters long. And if you guys have been tuned in, we've spent 6 weeks on chapter 1. over time we're going to forget what we did early on. And so it would be good to have notes of what the pastors were thinking about and teaching on, and then your own notes of what stood out to you and whatnot. So if you're interested in that, they're $5 at the back table, subsidized by the church. And I would encourage you, if you do buy one, please put your name in it, because there's only 4 colors, and we'll start to mix them up if we leave them on a chair. So with that, Pastor Rob's going to come and finish up the finance series.
Yeah, grab one of those binders. A lot of stuff going on. I'm going to do the virtual run. I'm really good when I run virtually. Really fast. Don't get tired. Okay, what we're going to do today, we're taking a little break. Justin had mentioned the Genesis series, and we're walking through that slowly, but we're doing it in chunks, and then we're taking breaks in between so we can kind of catch our breath with Genesis. And we're in the middle of one of those breaks, and we're doing a real quick 2-week series on money. And this is week number 2, and we're calling it the Money Mirage. And so just to briefly recap last week, and by the way, you can go back and listen to these messages online, and you might want to, if you missed it, listen to last week's message. But we talked about this, that last week we looked at some big picture ideas about money. And really what we said is this, is that money is a big deal. Money is a big deal. The reason that it's a big deal, well, you know that it's a big deal. You know, we have a midterm election coming up, and the elections, it always hinges on, no matter what else is going on in the world, one of the big questions is, how is the economy doing? and so it's a big deal, partly because it affects everything we do. Everything we do has money or value or a cost or a price attached to it. So money is a big deal. But it's a big deal for really a bigger reason than that. More than just because it's so pervasive or it flows through the current of our life so much. It's a big deal because it can very easily begin to compete with God. And last week we looked at Matthew chapter 6. Tommy, can you give me that next slide there? That we looked at Matthew chapter 6, and Jesus talked about money in there quite a bit, and he talked about it in big picture terms. And the reason that we're spending time in church talking about money, talking about finances, is because money can very, very easily, very quickly elevate itself in our minds and in our hearts to the point where it competes with God. We begin to look to our money, we begin to look at finances to give us direction. I'm going to make decisions based on what finances tell me to do. I'm going to find my identity in my money or how I use money. I'm going to look for security in my money, in my finances. We can do those things, and God says, no, those are jobs that I do, that I as God do. I give you your identity. I can give you security. I'm the one that can lead and guide you. But money can very easily and very quickly rise in our minds to a level where it begins to compete with God. And it's not the money itself. It's how we view it. It's not the actual thing itself. It's how we view it, what we think about it. And what we think about it dictates how it impacts our heart and our mind, which dictates how we use it. So we talked about this last week, how we need to understand what money is and isn't. And so, does anyone remember? See if you, well, never mind. School's done, we're not going to go there. But does anyone remember what money is not? It's not a demon. What was the first thing it's not? Oh, it's right there. See? It's not a dream. Money is not the dream, meaning it's not the goal. It's not how you define success in your life. Money, financial success, financial wisdom, they're fine things, but it is not the goal. It's not the dream. And we looked at where Jesus said, the guy who was living the American dream, he worked hard. He had so much stuff, he didn't have anywhere to put it. He said, I'm going to tear down my barns, build bigger ones, and I'm going to be able to retire early and just enjoy life. And God said, you fool, don't you understand that this is not, that a man's life does not consist of the abundance of his possessions. Money is not the dream. It's easy for that to become so in our hearts. We begin to think, hey, you know what, no matter what else happens, as long as I'm financially secure, everything will be okay. It's not true. It's not true. Money is not the goal of your life. It doesn't define success in your life. But money, it's not a dream. Neither is it a demon. Sometimes we can swing to the other side and think money is evil, is bad, and it's suspicious, and it's tainted, and it's ungodly, and all those things. That's not true either. It's not evil in and of itself. What money is a tool. Just like I have a garage that's full of tools. And money is a tool. It's a tool to do certain things. Most tools have specific purposes, don't they? There's not many tools that do everything. Almost every tool has some specific purposes. Money is a tool. It has some specific purposes. It does really, really well to do a couple things. To serve God and serve people, and to grow in wisdom and maturity. Those are the big things that God says money is really good for these things. It's a great way to serve me, says God, and to serve the people around you. To do what it is that I'm asking you to do in this world. And number two, how you view it, how you use it, is a great way for you to grow in wisdom and maturity. So money is not the dream, it's not the goal, but it's not a demon, it's not evil, it's a tool. But because of the fact that we can get so confused about money, because it's so easy for us to begin to look at money and to think it's something that it's not, to begin to give it a priority, then that's not, that when we do that, we get confused. And when we get confused, we get anxious. That's why there's always talk about the economy. What's going to happen? Am I going to have enough? It's very easy for us to get anxious about money. So God says, hey, I can do something. I can clarify for you, here's what money is and isn't. I can help you to see it clearly. I can help you to know how to use it well. And if you allow me, says God, to teach you how to think about it well and how to use it well, then I can take away the anxiety. I can give you a calmness and a peace about your finances. God clarifies and God calms. Okay? That was all last week. Today, what we're going to do is talk about some of those things that God says, here's a good way to use your money. The Bible is filled with not just big picture thoughts about finances, but with some very specific practical counsel. Do this with your money. Don't do that with your money. Things that God says, here are good ways to handle this, good ways to see it, so that you can use it well, and I can take away the anxiety about it. Today, what we're going to do is look at some of those things, just a handful of things that God says, here's good instruction for you as you live in a world where you're handling money and dealing with money almost every day. Two quick thoughts as we get into this. I'm just going to walk through a handful of things that God says about money. As I go through these, some of these things, as I share them, you may think, yep, I get that, I understand that, that's wonderful. Take this as a reminder or as an affirmation that, yeah, this is something that God says. And if I talk about something and you say, been doing that for years, I got it, that's wonderful. Just take this as a reminder or as an affirmation. Some of these things, as we talk about them, you may look at it and say, you know what, I need to grow in that. I never thought about that. I don't like that one. I'm not good at that one. That's fine. Some of these things that I'm going to share, my wife and I have been doing forever. The truth is, some of them I'm not very good at. So all of us, no matter where we are, allow God to speak to you, because that's the wonderful thing about this. Money cannot talk to you. God can. He can. Money does not love you. God does. God can speak to you about your money, and he'll do it today. That's an amazing thing. God wants to talk to you. And if you listen, I think he can speak to us. So whatever it is that you and God, as you interact with the stuff we're talking about today, let him either just affirm, yep, you're doing great in that, or, no, here's something that you can grow in, okay? All right. A handful of things that we're going to talk about. Here's the first one. First thing that God says you can and should do with your money, and it's tithe. Now, a tithe, we're starting off with a we're starting off controversial right from the start here, perhaps. Let me read a verse to you. This is in the Old Testament, the book of Malachi. And this is God speaking to the nation of Israel, and he's talking to them about all the different things that, mostly in Malachi, he's talking to them about things they're not doing, things that they're not doing well. And he starts this little passage by saying, "You're robbing me. You're robbing God." And they say, "How can we rob God?" And this is what God says in Malachi 3, verse 10. It says, but how do we rob you? In tithes and offerings, says the Lord. And then he says this, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room enough for it." So there's this idea of a tithe. What a tithe was, what God's talking about there, is a tithe is 10%. 10% of your income, the nation of Israel would bring it to the temple. They would bring it, in essence, to the institution that God had set up for them. It was the temple and the priests, and there was a whole system and a whole organization there that they would bring their tithe to, and then it would fund that. The priests would get their food out of that. It would supply what they needed for all of the temple worship, the things that God had asked the nation of Israel to do collectively. Bring the tithe in. As a group, you're serving me, you're worshiping me. Part of it is you bring in this 10% of your income. That was in the Old Testament. This is something, a lot of the Old Testament commands were specifically for the nation of Israel. Some of them transferred over to us, some did not. That's a tricky subject, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this idea of a tithe does show up in the New Testament in Luke 11. Verse 42, this is in the middle of a passage where, again, Jesus is telling people what they're not doing well. It's a whole list. He's talking to the Pharisees, to some of the leaders of the Jews at this time, and he's telling them things. Hey, you're missing this, you're missing that. But he says this in verse 42. He says, "Woe to you, Pharisees, because you give God a tenth of your mint, rue, and all other kinds of garden herbs, but you neglect justice and the love of God. You should have practiced the latter without leaving the former undone." He's saying to them, hey, you're tithing, you're bringing 10% of your stuff, but your heart isn't in it at all. You don't love me at all. It's good, you should bring the 10th, but you need to do it with a different attitude. The point to that is this. You will get different ideas. If you speak to different theologians, read different books, some people will say to you that as a Christian in the New Testament church age, a tithe is still a command. In other words, God tells you, I'm commanding you to bring 10%. Some people will say it's not a command, it's wisdom. It's a really, really good idea. You need to decide what you believe about that. I tend to believe it's not a command anymore, but I do believe that it is very, very wise. Here's why. Here's why I think the tithe is a really good thing. We said that money is a tool, and we said that it can very easily get to the point where it competes with God. I think a tithe is one of the best ways that we have to keep money from competing with God, because what I'm doing is I'm taking my money and I'm giving it to God. Does that make sense? I am taking my money and I am buying into what God is doing. I'm choosing to say, God, this is what you're about in the world. I'm going to buy into that. I'm buying into God's work. That's what a tithe is. And so money is not above you, God. It serves you. You've got things to do in the world. I'm going to use some of my money to buy into that and join you in it financially. I think it's just a good thing for us as I work through what are the priorities in my life. Because remember, we talked last week about how this money can very easily begin to rise to a level of equality or even to compete with God. This is a great way for you and I to stop that from happening. Money does not rise to a level that's equal with God. Instead, I'm going to use it and I'm going to give it to God for God to do. I'm going to buy into what God is doing. I think that you take this for what it's worth. I think that perhaps what God is doing in the world, He does mostly, I believe, through the local church. You can give, if you decide to tithe, you can give that tithe to, there are God's doing things all over the world, and you may decide to give some here, some here, some here. That's totally between you and the Lord. Take this for what it's worth. This is my understanding. The local church that you are a part of is that family where God does most of his work in your life. Most of what God does with you happens right there in the local church. Giving your tithe to the local church, I think, is just a very, very practical, good thing to do. And there is a promise attached to this. In Malachi there, it's kind of a crazy promise. God gives all kinds of promises in the Bible. Some of them are unqualified promises. I'm going to do this no matter what else happens. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. That's an unconditional, unqualified, this is what I'm going to do and it doesn't matter what else happens. God gives a promise here in Malachi that's a conditional promise. If you do this, then this thing will happen. He says, if you bring the whole tithe into my storehouse, test me and see what I'm going to do. I will open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there's no more need. There's a promise that I think remains with the tithe. So the first bit of practical advice that God gives us is buy into his work. Use your money. Remember what we said last week. Use worldly wealth to get involved in what God is doing. A tithe is a very practical way for you to do that. To buy into, to keep your heart in check. Here's a second thing, practical advice God asks us to do with our money. Some of this stuff is going to seem pretty obvious to you, and it is. But it's good to remember, pay your bills. Pay your bills. Romans 13:7, give everyone what you owe him. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. Let no debt remain outstanding. Every month, I'm old-fashioned, I'm old school. I still got all my bills in the mail. And I write checks and put them in the envelope, put a stamp on it, and take them out to the... I know there's a whole pile of you who are just saying, yes. So I do too, and a whole bunch of you are saying, what? A knucklehead. I mean, you can just... But however you do it, pay your bills. Pay your bills. That seems so simple and it seems so obvious, and it is, but we should pay them, I would offer this perhaps. Pay them quickly and cheerfully. Pay your bills quickly and cheerfully. When my kids were little, and you know, we would ask them to obey mom and dad, and we worked on that a lot, and learning how to take direction was good. But as they grew, we wanted them to take direction, not just begrudgingly, and, you know, go clean your room, you stupid, your room cleaning. No, you're cleaning your room, that's very good, but you need to be happy about it. Pay your bills quickly and cheerfully. I don't know if I like to, I do in my mind and heart complain bitterly about Xcel Energy. The amount of money I give them is shocking to me. My house is all electric. The heat, everything in my house. And so, you know those meters that spin? Mine's like a helicopter. Just and it's so easy for me to get angry when I get the bill, but I sure love my refrigerator. Oh, I sure like the heat in the wintertime. Pay your bills. God gives you money to pay your bills. Do it quickly. Do it cheerfully. Here's a third wisdom God gives us about money, and it has to do with debt. Debt is something, this verse is a good one to remember. It's Proverbs 22:7. It says, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Now, you will get different ideas about debt from Christians. Some Christians believe that debt is a sin. It's wrong to borrow money. It's wrong to lend money at interest. Some people believe, debt is just a tool, but you got to be careful with it. You need to decide that. But whatever you decide, this verse is true. If you choose to borrow money, it comes with a price. It comes with a cost. The borrower is servant to the lender. What that means is if I borrow money, then my monthly budget has now become a servant to that creditor. And every month, whether I want to or not, I have to pay that creditor a certain amount of money. Some of my use of money has been taken away from me, or the freedom of the use of money. I have to give it to the creditor. And that's a choice I made, and that's fine. Or maybe you think it's not fine. You need to decide. But the truth is that there is a cost to it. Here's how I view debt. You take this for what it's worth. Debt to me, I don't believe it's a sin, but I understand why some people would. I don't believe it is, but I think you have to be very careful with it. I think of debt like dynamite. Dynamite is a really helpful thing for certain things. If you want to take a stump out, dynamite is a great way to do it. And it's kind of fun. If you've never done it, it's hard to get dynamite anymore, but as a kid, I knew old farmers who would take out stumps with dynamite, and I'd go help them. And it's pretty fun, and it works. You dig a hole under that big old oak stump, and you put 2 or 3 sticks of dynamite under there and get away, and this stump comes out. But it's really, really, really bad for moving your couch. If you want to vacuum under your couch, you don't need dynamite. It's too much. Debt is like that. Debt works really well for some great big things. For a lot of little things, it's too much. So you want to buy a house? Well, I think debt might be a really good tool for that. You want to buy, a new rocking chair? Maybe not. Maybe not. You decide. Just know that if you choose to use debt, be careful with it, because you are giving control of your finances to whatever degree to your creditor. You become the servant to the lender, okay? Here's another one. Another thing God tells us to do as Christians, ways to handle our money, and it is to save money. To save money. There are a lot of Proverbs about saving. Proverbs is filled with advice about money, by the way. And we're going to look at a few Proverbs here. Proverbs 21:20 says, "In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has." The house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. When you have things, it's good to set some aside. Proverbs 13:11. God says this. He says, "Dishonest money dwindles away, but he who gathers money little by little makes it grow." And you know that. You've probably seen the projections. If you're 20 years old and you begin to put away like $20 a month or something like that, it is amazing what that turns into by the time you're 60. It's astronomical. He who gathers money little by little makes it grow. And there's a reason to do it. I like this verse in Proverbs 27. Sometimes we can think, well, why? What's the point of saving money? Well, here in Proverbs 27, there's a couple places in Proverbs 27 that this is kind of laid out. It says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and suffer for it." A little later in this chapter, I don't have this verse up there, but it says, "Be sure to know the condition of your flocks, give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not endure forever, crown is not secure. When the hay is removed, the new growth appears, and the grass from the hills is gathered in. The lambs will provide you with clothing, and the goats with the price of a field. You'll have plenty of milk to feed you and your family." There's a thought there of this. We don't know what the future is going to hold, so if I'm able to put something away now, that's wise, because in the future I might not have it. Saving is a very practical, godly thing to do. To be wise. I'm not just going to devour everything I have. I'm going to think forward. I'm going to look into the future and see what might my needs be. How can I provide for them? I got this much money coming in now. I might not have that coming in every month going forward. Do I have savings to carry me over in case times go bad? We can't save enough to... Now, well, here's the warning. There is a great warning with savings. It is wise to do. It is wise to do. But it comes... This bit of advice, at least in my mind, comes with a huge warning. And that's this. Saving money and you begin to pile it up, what does that do to your heart? It's very easy for that to begin to be woe. It can entice us. Danger, Will Robinson. Warning, look out. That pile of money, you save your money, it can easily become enticing. It can easily become what defines you. It can because I'm smart, I'm wise, I'm financially astute. See all the money I have saved up. It can easily become what you see as your security. I'm going to be okay because I've saved up my money. It can easily do all the things we said money can't do. Remember? Money is not secure. It is not secure. You glance at it and it sprouts wings and it flies away like an eagle. It is not permanent. You're going to die and leave here. It does not define you. It doesn't make you a better Christian to have money saved up. It might be wise. It's a great idea. But be careful. Be careful. Sometimes I think as Christians, different people have different things. In our circles, as I've been, Christian for many years and lived in this church for many years. And I'll be honest, here at Cedar Creek, and maybe this is true of other places, sometimes it feels like we have this subtle undercurrent that, we think that we're going to get to God someday, and God's going to say, here's all the money you've ever made in your life. How much do you still have? And He's not gonna. Money is a tool. You use it. If you have a box of nails, you don't get the box of nails to have them. Look at all my nails. No, you use them. You pound them into things. Money is a tool. Save it. Be wise with it. Look ahead. Don't spend all you have, but do not let it grip your heart. And the more you have saved up, I believe it's easier for it to begin to rise to the level where it competes with God. Saving is wise, but be careful. Be careful as you save that it doesn't define you. It doesn't become your security, because it can do neither of those things. We talked about that last week. So here's advice that I think God gives us that counteracts that. And that's this. If you want to use money wisely, give. Learn to be generous. Practice giving it away. In 1 Timothy 6, verse 17, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age. That is a great little chunk of verses to memorize, because it encapsulates so much of what we're talking about here. Don't put your hope in wealth. It's uncertain. Instead, put your hope in God. He provides everything for your enjoyment. Do good, be rich in good deeds, be generous and willing to share, and you'll lay up treasure for yourselves. This is such a good thing, but right in the middle of it says, command them to be generous and willing to share. Being generous and giving is the most repeated financial advice in the Bible. When God gives financial counsel, this one is the one He says the most often. Give it away. Be generous. Look for people who don't have it, give it to them. Find places that you can take what is yours and make a choice to give it away to someone or something else. This is the most repeated advice, and I think it's because it helps us do the most important thing, and that's to protect our heart. If you choose to give your money away, you are saying, I'm going to have to find my security somewhere else, because I'm taking some of my security. If you think money is secure, I'm taking some of it and I'm letting go. I'm letting it, it's escaping me. It's going away, and I'm doing it on purpose. It protects your heart and it opens your eyes. It helps you to see, oh my gosh, I was so caught up in this, but I gave it away and I didn't starve to death. Goodness. God, you're right about the promises that you make. I think generosity and giving is perhaps the most powerful thing you can do to get your mind right about money. If you choose to give it away, it helps protect your heart and open your eyes. Let me give you just a brief example. No, I'm not going to because I don't have time. We're going to just move on here. It helps protect your heart, and it is a tool for you. It helps you to do the things that God asks you to do. Choosing to give your money away takes wisdom. It takes humility. It takes character. And as you work at it, as you do it, you grow. It really is. Giving is a way that we can serve and grow. It's a tool to help us to serve and grow. I guess I'll leave it at that. So give. Tithe, pay your bills, careful with debt, save, but be careful with it. There's warnings. Save and give at the same time. I think if you can do both of those things, in fact, in our budget, and by the way, I'm not particularly good at some of the things. I'm not a good saver. I'm not. I'm a spender. Some of us are spenders, some of us are savers. I'm a spender. I married a spender. We need help. So we have worked saving into our budget. It's just right there. Every month, X number of dollars goes into the savings account. Every paycheck, X number of dollars goes into the savings account. We have also worked giving into our budget. Every month, X number of dollars goes out. I take some of our savings, some of what we save, and I segregate it, and that's to give away as things come up. So every month when I put money into our savings account, part of that goes into an account where that's just for somebody else. When something big comes up or some need comes up and we see it, we're just going to give to that. Be intentional about these things. And again, some of these things you're good at, some of them you're not. Be willing to grow. Here's the last thing, the last bit of advice that it's a little bit different, but it's important, and it's be content. Learn to be content in your financial state. In Philippians 4, it says, Paul is speaking here, and he's speaking directly about this situation, about money. If he has it, if he doesn't have it, what his financial state is. That's the context of this. And in verse 12 of chapter 4, it says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. That's an amazing statement. And if that could be true of you and I, wouldn't that be wonderful? You know what? I know what it is to have plenty of money. I've been there. I've lived in that situation. And I learned how to be content there. I know what it is to not have money. I have lived in that situation where I was hungry. I've been there, and I've learned to be content there. I'm okay in either place. Isn't that what we'd really love to have when it comes to our money? And then he says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Making contentment a part of your financial plan is wildly wise, I think. And contentment, sometimes I think we think contentment might be like, it's outside of our control almost. Well, I'll be content if circumstances dictate that I'll be content. But Paul says here, no, my contentment it's outside of the movement of circumstances, whether I'm well-fed or hungry, in plenty or in want. His contentment is not dependent on what's going on around him. It's dependent on something else. You and I can practice being content with our finances. Contentment is two things. It is both a practice and a result. It's both. We think it's just one. We tend to think of it, contentment is a result of something else. Well, it is, but it's also a practice. Or maybe a way to think of it is it's a choice and a gauge. If you are discontent in your financial situation, if you're always thinking you have to have more, if you're never satisfied with what you have, if you think you're being somehow, if you're unable to enjoy it, if you're discontent, it is a gauge for you, I think, to say, Lord, am I seeing this incorrectly? Am I seeing this incorrectly? Do I need to sit down with you and let you tell me something that I'm missing? Am I looking to this for something that it can't do? Am I missing the blessings you're giving me? What is it, Lord? And help me to practice it. Help me to practice being content. And you can. You can. One of the amazing things God gives us, one of the unbelievably powerful things that God gives you, he says, and Paul says this, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. The more time you spend with God, you are able to control things that many people can't control. You can choose to be content. You don't have to just hope that it happens. You don't have to trust that if everybody else does what they're supposed to do, then I can be happy and content. No. God says, I can give that to you. You and me together, I can give you that contentment. This is a great place to practice it with your finances. Why? Because it grips our heart. It's so easy to be afraid of it. It's so easy to see what other people have. Last week I talked about, why don't you give me $175 billion? And that is the absolute, and I don't know why, but that number goes through my head. You could do it, God. You could rain it down from heaven on me right now. I grew up with all of my cousins. And I worked with them for many years. For 10 years I worked. And many of them, at this point in their lives, are millionaires. Men that I grew up with who have now millions of dollars. And the number of millions that I have is no millions. And so it's really easy for me to look at my cousins and to be discontent. Why did I quit my job as a lawyer? What was I thinking? Why didn't my rich uncle give me my... Whatever. Why can't I just go hunting? One of my cousins just took 2 of his boys down to Argentina to hunt some kind of sheep that I'd never heard of before. It's like, why can't I do that? It's easy to be discontent, or I can choose to say, you know what, Lord? You bless me. I have what I need, more than I need. Look at all the things I get to do. Contentment is a practice as well as a gauge, and it can go both ways. Does that make sense? If I'm discontent, Lord, what do I need to do to be content? But work at it, and it puts and keeps money in the right place and perspective in our heart. Contentment does. If I'm content, it means probably, I think very probably, that I have put money in the right place, and I'm seeing it from the right perspective. If I'm discontent, I think something's off here. And okay, Lord, what do I need to think differently or do differently so that I can choose to be content in this situation? That's a lot of information. I encourage you to go to the Lord and say, Lord, what do you want me to do with this stuff? Because this is stuff that God can speak to you about. I don't know how you handle your finances. And I don't need to. This is really between you and the Lord. God wants to give you instruction. Remember, we talked about that. Left to ourselves, it's easy for us to get off on this. God says, I can instruct you. I can clarify. I can help you to understand how to think about money and know how to handle it so that it's a good, powerful tool and so that it's a blessing. We talked about that last week. It can be a blessing to you. God says, I can help you to do that. If you don't allow God to help you, I'm afraid we're quickly going to get to that place where it begins to grip our heart too much, and then we begin to get confused and anxious about it. So I hope and pray that you just take these things and go to God and say, Lord, you speak me. I give you permission to speak into my finances. I'm not going to shield this from you. I'm going to open it up to you, Lord. What do you want to tell me? What might I need to do differently? Who is the God of my life? And this may sound harsh or this may sound judgmental. I don't mean it to be, but I do mean it to reflect what I think Jesus said. You cannot serve both God and money. If you shield your finances from God, you are serving this to a degree. And you are saying, I'll serve you in all kinds of things, God, but not this. It's going to be one or the other. So you say, here's my finances, here's my budget, here's my stuff. You help me to know what to do with it. And I don't know what he's going to say. I don't know. That's between the two of you. I thought it might be helpful to give you, as we end this here, my 3 big promises or verses. For me and my wife, the 3 big picture promises, the 3 big picture thoughts in God's Word that have directed and defined us. And not that they have to be yours, but maybe just to help you to see this is how God can lead you, perhaps. As I've worked through this, and soon I have worked through this and thought, Lord, what do you want us to do with our money? These are principles, these are things that God has kind of laid on our hearts that have directed us. Ways we've tried to say, God, you're more important than money. Ways we've tried and worked hard to be content. But here are my 3 biggies, my 3 big promises or verses that kind of direct my understanding of finances. The first one is one that we started this series with last week. It's in Matthew chapter 6. And the ones that, well, verse 31, this is the end of quite a discourse on money, but starting with verse 31, it says, "Do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." This, for me, reminds me of priorities. God's kingdom is more important than my kingdom here. God's work is what's going to define success in my life, not my financial success here on earth. It reminds me of my priorities, and it reminds me of the responsibilities. God says, your responsibility, Rob, is to seek me. You seek first my kingdom and my counsel. You seek me, and then God's responsibility is, I'm going to give you the things that you need to live. This is a fearful verse. This is a fearful and wonderful verse because it's like saying, jump off the cliff and I'll catch you. It's exactly what it is. About 25 years ago, I felt that God was asking me to be a pastor of this church. I was practicing law at the time. About that same time, we had our second child. My wife was an RN, and we just felt like God was asking her to stay home and be with the kids. So I quit my law job and went to work for a very small church. And Sue quit her nursing job and went to work for my kids, who didn't have any money at all. And our income got cut by 2/3 in about 3 months. And we did it because I said, well, God, you're making a promise here, and I'm going to take you up on it. And if this promise isn't true, I'm in trouble. If this promise isn't true, God, I am in a lot of trouble because I am choosing. I know I need a house and I got a family now. There's a lot of financial needs in my life, and they're not going to go away for a long time to come. But I'm choosing not to chase them. I'm going to chase you instead, and you have to come through or I'm in trouble. And I think God is honored when we do that. I really do. God is honored when we do it, but I've never forgotten that. This sets my priorities, and it tells me the responsibilities when it comes to money. Here's the second biggie for me. It's Psalm 4, verse 7. It says this. It says, "You have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound." I like that. I have that written on an index card, and I put it with my budget stuff. So when I'm doing the checkbook, that verse is always right there. You have filled my heart, God, with more joy than when that person's grain and new wine abound. In other words, there's a person who has all the money in the world, like my cousins. And that's fine. I'm not saying that's bad or wrong. I don't have it. But you have filled my heart with joy. I am filled with joy. And it's not because of how much money I have. It's a reminder to me. Lord, I made certain priority decisions a long time ago. And I'm reminding myself that you're faithful. You are filling my heart with joy, no matter how much money I have. And as I do my checkbook, my heart is filled with greater joy than if this was 20 times bigger than it was. That's what that verse means to me, and I think about it, and I remind myself. God fills me with joy, not my money. And the last one is in Ecclesiastes. We shared this verse a couple of times. I just love this verse. It's Ecclesiastes 5. It's a few verses, starting with verse 18. Then I realized that it is good and proper for a man to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given him. For this is his lot. Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift of God. He seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. There's a lot in there. You go and read that verse. Ecclesiastes 5, 18 to 20. Here's what it says to me. I have a choice whether I'm content or not. God says, I've given you things, Rob. I've kept my promise. God kept his promise. When our income got cut by 2/3, we did not go hungry. We have a house. We paid for our house. It's paid off. God has come through in thousands of ways, some big, some small. This reminds me, I have a choice. I'm going to look at the blessings you've given me, and I'm going to be blessed by them. And then the fear of money goes away. You keep me occupied with gladness of heart. Now, I have my moments when my cousin sends me pictures of the unknown sheep that he shot in Argentina. I have my moments, but I remember, Lord, you've given me wealth and possessions, not as much as someone else, but you have given me what I need. You have kept your promises, God, and you've enabled me to enjoy them, and I'm grateful, and I'm happy. Does that make sense? Those things have directed me. Let God direct you and your money. Give up control. This is so hard, but this is where it really comes down to it. Who controls your finances? If it's you, you may think that you have control of them. You don't. It controls you. If you turn it over and say, Lord, help me to know how to think about this and help me to know how to use it. And as you open it up, what you find is it becomes this powerful tool in your hand. It becomes this rich blessing to yourself and to the people around you. Stop asking money to do what it cannot do, which is to give you direction in your life, give you security, give you identity. It can do none of those things. Only God can. Give your money to God and let him give it back to you as a powerful tool, as a rich, wonderful blessing to you and the people around you. This is how we grow in wisdom and maturity, folks. This is how we grow in wisdom and maturity. Seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness. Is my goal in life, God, to become more and more like you? I'm going to make that my priority. The way I think about and use my money can help me do that. But it requires me to let it go, to let you be God of it, to let you direct me. I hope and pray that you will. It is like jumping off a cliff. I get it. It is. And it's not even jumping off a cliff. It's turning your back and falling backwards over. I used to do that with my kids. I would put them on the deck, and I would say, jump. Ooh, it's kind of fun. And they're scared, and then they do it. And they jump, and it was fun. They want to do it again. And then I'd put them back on the deck, and I'd put my hands in my pockets. And I'd say, jump. Take your hands out, Daddy, and hold them up. Nope. Jump. And finally they'd do it, and Dad would catch them somehow. And then I would do this, and dads will get this, moms think I'm crazy. I would put my hands in my pockets and turn my back. And I would say, jump. No, turn around, Daddy. Turn around. Nope. You jump. Of course, I was cheating. I can see them. I got my head like this. And as soon as they jump, I'd turn around and catch them. Money is you standing on the cliff, and God's there with his hands in his pockets. Or maybe it feels like he's looking the other way, and he's saying, jump. He'll catch you, but you got to jump. You got to jump. Lord, help us to jump. Help us, Father, to trust you. At the core, we want to be your people, not this world's. We want you to define us, take care of us, not our money. Help us, Lord. It's hard to do. It's easy for money to become something else in our hearts. By your grace, I pray you would help us to let you be God in our hearts, so that money can become that powerful tool, can become that rich blessing to ourselves and the people around us. Help us, Lord. Speak to each one of us. Each one of us is at a different place here. I just pray that we would hear your voice in each one of our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to take a 3-minute break. We're going to come back and we're going to sing. After the worship,